Very good.
So, should we start?
I think we should do what I was doing in the class. Latecomers have to pay 10 rupees.
Okay, I'll put my QR code on
we can have a party.
People can send.
Nimish, you have to do some online payment possibility.
हाँ बिल्कुल हो जाएगा मैं अपना जीपे भेज दूँ. So okay, formally, good evening all, and thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of the first IDC alumni debate, and the topic of the debate today is design thinking. Is it boon or is it bullshit? So as you know, the topic is design thinking. Is it boon or is it bullshit? Before I and a big thank you to the panelists as well to be part of this. But before I introduce the panelists, let me request all of you to except the panelists to put your videos off and to be on mute. So only the panelists will have the video on and will not be on mute. The rest of us can be on mute. With that, let me introduce the panelists. Let me pull it up. So we have 4 panelists. Panelists in the order in which they graduated from IDC are Raj Gopal. He is from the 98-90 PD He works in the area of product design with Kaynes Technology and is based out of Dehradun. Great place to be, Raj. Raj is keen about sustainable tech, battery tech, FCs, etc. The next panelist is Ari. Ari is from the 91-93 PD batch. So there are 2 PD and 2 VCs. He works in the area of digital design with Jaguar Land Rover and is based out of Greater London. Ari loves anything car and design.
Wow, Ari, I just did the I-Pace test drive yesterday. Wow.
Oh, good. We should get a Range Rover, the new one.
Okay. Our third panelist is Pradyot Urf Pradyot. He is from the 94-96 VC batch. He runs a consulting firm in Washington, DC with the focus on transforming large businesses and helping build startups from the ground up. He loves cricket, travel, and EVs. So, Prady, what's the score? Konark is from the 2010-12 VC batch. He works in the area of user experience for BFSI and design operations with Moonraft Innovation Labs and is based out of Bangalore. Konark loves to travel and Marvel movies and watch Marvel movies, I guess. Finally, we have Professor Atwankar, who of course needs no introduction, but for those who are non-IDCs, and there might be some here, Professor Atwankar has been a core pillar of IDC for more than 3 decades and continues to be associated with IDC in many capacities. Sir, we are very honored to have you here as the moderator of this debate. So over to you. Over to you, Professor Atwankar.
Thank you, Nimish, for the invitation. On behalf of the panelists, I welcome all of you. It's the first initiative to start something new. We had presentations before from students who were passed out of IDC. This is the first one where there's a debate being planned. And believe me, it's going to be different. And that is something which you should look forward to. Nimish did introduce you to topic design thinking, boon or bullshit. I think terms used, straight comes out of what happens in students' hostel in IIT, these kind of words. And we'll continue to use these words as we go along. Okay. The duration of this particular panel discussion is 90 minutes. Maybe we will be able to wrap a little earlier, but keep that plan. And remember that you are not just a listener. You would be participating not only to give views, but you're also been giving your opinions through. This is the first time you have planned polls, and let's see how it goes. Okay. The topic is very close to my heart. I've been talking about design thinking, but Nimish kind of subtly made sure that I become a moderator so other people speak and I listen, which I have not been doing for years together. So it's a good time to listen. Let's go to a little bit of an introduction to the topic. First is design thinking has polarized people. People have absolutely opposite responses, and that's what comes out in the title. A lot of people go gaga over it, saying this is the only thing and this is going to save the world and all kinds of things. There are others who think that it's a bullshit, and there are quite a few who sit on the fence. They depend on which side the wind is. They kind of shift their position. One thing is very sure, that it promised much more than what it delivered, and that's for sure. Almost everybody agrees with that. Also, designers have a very funny relationship with design thinking. First thing, they feel threatened. What if others start thinking like designers? What will be their competitive edge? And that is something which has always influenced the way these kind of debates happen. So we have 4 passionate speakers who have taken their positions and they will declare their positions. We also have equally passionate listeners. Okay, and listeners will have enough opportunities to give their opinions through either polls or through talk. Let me introduce you to how it is going to be different before we go to the rules of that debate. First, we will start with an audience poll first. Nimish, would you be able to introduce that poll?
Yeah, I just started it.
Yeah. Just listen to the words on polls. The way it is used, it's kind of a hostile lingo that goes in there. So Nimish, you can put that on.
Yeah, it is on. So guys, you'll be able to see the poll on the bottom right.
I'm not able to.
You won't. In activities at the bottom right, there'll be a small dot. So click on that, and then go into polls. So we already got about 8 votes. So we got 12 votes. 19, 20. Sir, we got about 21 votes. I think we can continue.
Okay, can you show the results?
Do you want to show it now, or should we show it like at the end?
All right, let's keep it secret.
Okay, yeah.
All right. Okay, so that's a poll where you have given your opinions. Now let what panelists are going to speak about it. This will be shown eventually, but there are going to be surprises in between also. Okay. Before we go to the speakers, let me give you ground rules of this particular discussion. It's called a debate, but it's actually not a debate. It is supposed to be a P3 defense of 4 people who are going to present. But instead of calling it P3, we called it a P4 because they already completed their P3 successfully a long time back. So the structure actually follows the structure of the defense. 4 people, each one will present, and there is one jury which we already selected. For instance, Ari is going to be jury for Praddy, Raj is going to be jury for Ari, Konark is going to be jury for Raj, and Praddy is going to be jury for Konark. And this is a sequence in which they will present. They will have about 10 minutes totally, that is 5 minutes for making a presentation. Then the jury will ask questions, and during the question itself, when the panelist is explaining his solutions or ideas, there would be a poll where instead of you judging panelists, you will be judging the juries. How well the question is. Let me explain you what is the idea behind this. Okay, all of you have gone through juries during your P2 and P3, and you hated them, right? They were never very kind of kind to you, and so we are just reversing the situation where you show your hatred through your poll. So you judge the jury rather than the panelists. So don't worry about the panelists. We'll have a separate way of looking at them. You judge the jury. So after every presentation, polling in which you actually vote for whether the jury has done well or not. Of course, there will be options which are given to you. Okay. So it's a way of getting even with the juries that we have planned. Okay. There will be 6 minutes for 5 to 6 minutes for a speaker to make a presentation. The jury will ask questions, and panelists will answer, and the poll will go simultaneously. Okay. So let me invite Paddy to start, and he will take about 5 minutes, and he will explain his ideas, and then Hari will ask questions.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Atwankar. Thank you, everybody. So I'm here to debate in favor of design thinking. It's a real thing, and if you get it right, it can help all of us, and we will make a huge impact to the world. That's my position. By the way, designers are not necessarily good thinkers. So do not think that design thinking is a natural extension to design practice. So as a designer, we need to evolve and upgrade ourselves. I'm going to cover my why thinking is higher order of intellectual activity. So let me start with a brief history of thinking. We Homo sapiens were not sophisticated, strong, or skilled as a species, or among all other species that existed. But we survived and no one else did because we could think. We were creative. Our closest cousin Neanderthal vanished despite being powerful, skilled, and competent. We survived because we use creativity to build our societies, art, science, and technology. This story of Neanderthal repeats itself. Civilization self-destruct itself. Companies comes and go. Individuals are forced out because sometimes these entities don't embrace new ideas or change, never evolve, and call many a time which may be progressive idea a bullshit. So conventional thinking means knowing is everything. If you knew everything, if you mastered your skill, that is everything. Problem is logical thinking, know-how, critical reasoning, or mastering your skill has no guarantee for success. Or it is more like driving by looking in the backview mirror. Okay, I call it hindsight. Very important, but hindsight. This inhibits us to contemplate problems never encountered before, discover new solutions, and deal with paradoxes and evasive problems. For example, if conventional wisdom really mattered, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, and Netflix won't be industry leaders. Every industry is shaken, and I'm giving US perspective, but every industry is shaken from inside and not from, it is not disrupted from inside, it is disrupted from outsiders, coming from outside. Top 10 companies in the world today in 2021, they almost did not exist 20 years ago. And go and find out those who existed as a top 10 or 20 companies, where are they now? So you wonder why. Okay, knowing your thing, which is hindsight, is important, but that won't protect you. David versus Goliath isn't that rare. Okay, it repeats itself very often. So solving problem, developing solution is logical and straightforward only when problem is stated. But none of the problems that we face today are simply as stated or straightforward. Most of the problems require foresight, not just the hindsight. No one can see the future, but thinking like a designer can develop your foresight. And this is an important concept. Okay, foresight versus hindsight. So design thinking is a philosophy. Okay, I want to really take a higher ground and want to bring that perspective. The design thinking is a philosophy. At the tool set and method level, it is quite loosey-goosey. And probably that is very good for an open and tolerant system. But all of these frameworks somehow connect at a spiritual level, at the ethos or at a guiding principle level. So what are those? Number one, human-centered. We got to know what they want. Okay, customer focus. It is equally important that we know what we want, because we are here for a mission, for a purpose, and a higher goal. Number three, holistic. You have to really account for end-to-end, various scenario, context, consequences, stakeholders. Inclusive, because ideas can come from anywhere, especially the simplest ideas can come from anywhere. Each of us are creative. With a little bit of facilitation and design leadership, we can get good idea and change the world. And there has been demonstrated proof for this. There are so many other ethos, for example, focus on creativity, exploration, mindset, and all those things. So what is this debate about? This is about skepticism, myth, and cynicism. My colleague on the other side.
Yeah, 1 minute.
My colleagues on the other side believe creativity is a virtue bestowed on just few, which is entitlement. Okay, designers are unquestionable like brain surgeon. Okay, this is false equivalency. They believe that evolution and expansion of our profession is somehow perversion. I can't understand that. They believe that schooling makes somebody special. They also believe that creativity is mostly artistry and craftsmanship. Okay, this is a gross misunderstanding of our profession and a very narrow-minded definition. I think this is an outrage which is misplaced. This is half glass empty mindset. That is what this debate is all about. So why am I here? I'm a progressive and I'm optimist. I don't like false outrage. I welcome new methods and ideas, especially when it is close to my profession, which I do and preach every day. So here I am. I want to share my optimism, change heart and mind, and appeal to progressive part of your mind. I guess everybody has that. Management sciences have evolved from TQM, Lean, Sigma, Agile, and now it's time for our way of thinking. So we should embrace it. I am here to quarantine you from FUD. That means fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and welcome people to be part of this movement. To those that like to be contrarian, to be fashionable, consider this. If your mind is shaped by negative biases all the time, it will adversely impact your evolution, and you may be at the verge of extinction or becoming irrelevant. Thank you.
Okay, good. Harish, your time to ask questions.
Prati, you said we are talking design thinking in terms of designer's role, right? But how is it understood in the business, and how business is enacting it or enforcing it in the system? Because their perspective is different, and that's why the whole project or everything is done, right?
So one thing which I mentioned was that this is not natively design activity kind of thing. Okay, the thinking part is a different kind of cognitive thing which happens in the mind, and really perfecting or focusing on the solution is one. Most of the time when problem is given, okay, when somebody has solved and stated the problem, it is very easy that then you can deploy a process and a craftsmanship in order to produce that. Most of the product in the market which fails, they don't fail because of the smart craftsmanship or process. They fail at the idea level, okay, because they could not unsee it. Right problem they couldn't pinpoint. Companies, for example, any time when economic downturn happens, the biggest company, most established companies goes out of the business. Why? Because they were not able to inculcate newer ideas. They were ignoring the trend. Look, I have given example of Tesla, Apple, Netflix. These guys are leader in their own vertical, in their own industry. Why? If know-how, the logical thinking and analysis paralysis was the only thing, then I think.
Yeah. Is it just an idea, or the ecosystem supports the idea? So which is the master? Is it just idea which makes the company success, or ecosystem makes the company success, or the idea success? So
I think if I rephrase your question, what you're asking is that thinking part can be separated out from the doing part? No, I think it has to.
Because we make ideas, but it has to be shaped up and it has to be marketed. There are some whole lot of things.
Of course. And
that's what makes the company success. It's not just the idea. And there are other things.
No. And nobody should say that. Nobody should state that. And I have not stated that. What I'm saying is there has to be a spiritual amalgamation of these two things. If you are not really spending enough time thinking about what the problem is, what the consequences are, and you jump to the solution, you will create a bad solution. Okay, if you ignore the problem and create your own notion of problem, you will create a bad solution. I am saying these two things should exist, coexist. If we are very good at craft, we got to move upward and start thinking about questioning the problem first before we jump at the solution. Likewise, people who are just defining the idea and problem, they have to learn how, have to master the other side as well.
Okay, we are running out of time.
Yeah.
So Nimish, that vote is a little bit of a problem. I'm not able to do that. Can you check?
It is open, so we got 8 votes.
In my case, it's not moving at all. Oh, static.
Once you have voted, you won't see unless I show the results.
Okay, so we are not going to vote on this.
I can show the
No,
results.
this was coming, sir.
Yeah, this,
Second poll.
Vote
this
is
one is
coming.
coming.
On my screen, it's not active. Anyway,
On the right
so
hand side, bottom corner is 3 shapes, no, sir. Those are
Yeah.
the one where you have to click.
I
Then
checked
at the
it. I checked it up, but it's
Okay. No,
it shows my
then
previous result.
okay, oh, that's so. Okay.
So we got 16 votes, and for this one, I'll open the results.
Yeah.
So you can see the results now. Result of this particular question. So 2 people think this question to Pradyot was bullshit. 6 people think it was very sharp, and 9 think nine are not sure what the question itself was. So we got 17 votes, and I'll end the poll now.
Okay. So now it's my
Okay,
turn.
so that's as far as
Good job, Hari.
grading goes. Now let's go to the second one, and I think the second one is going to be Hari speaking,
Yeah.
and the jury is Konark, right?
No, sir. It's going to be
Raj.
Raj.
Yeah, it's going to be.
And for Raj, it will be me.
Yeah, Raj is going to be the
yeah,
jury.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I start. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a different perspective for design thinking. Basically, design thinking is a catchphrase embodying the system to thinking employed in problem-solving endeavors. It is so superficial to believe that what meets the eye is good enough to achieve breakthrough solutions for any wicked problems in a short sprints. It's made to look like a serious attempt of seeking workable solutions through peer activity of the people, by the people, for the people, without understanding the tragedy of commons. Emphasis on empathy and inclusiveness and rapid prototyping makes it a child's play on 5 stepping stones with the trip hazards. I would say, and it's like an apple a day keeps a doctor away suits well for this application, or it's a tool. And basically, I'm referring to Danish design ladder categorizes businesses into 4 categories. One, non-business, non-design, design as styling, design as process, and design as strategy. I assume the design thinking is aiming at the last 2 rung of as target market, where designers needed to develop the business and progress in their own targets or areas. So our industry has created a lot of mediocre products, and where so far, and innovations cycling since the 1970s, we are looking for more innovations, and that's how the businesses are running, are looking for it. So in the world of logic, analytical, business executives see DT as their silver bullet to solve wicked problems, and the innovation force, as it seems learned easily and applied by anyone, attracts business decision makers, and more and more companies adopting it. Design thinking demystifies, democratizes design business, design beyond businesses. Over 80% of the products launched fails eventually. 95% of the startup fail due to botched execution. Design thinking is just one cog of the corporate innovation machinery. Innovation sits at the intersection of design, technology, and business, governed by people and processes. Design thinking might help to identify a solution, but it is not solution in itself. It takes more than design thinking to bring ideas alive. And design thinking does not deliver value until organization structures like processes, policies, systems, resources, and values, business model, pricing model, revenue model, costing or marketing, and target customer all align together. In spite of a best idea, even one of these is not right, it will be the difference between success and failure. The strength of design thinking itself, its one weakness, because insufficient and unconnected to the reality of the business world. The reasons being, it's quoted, misperception, loss of meaning, misunderstanding, and not accepting creative elements, lack of business elements, language and perspective barriers, missing future, wrong implementation processes, poor direction, scoping, co-creation, and misconception and approach to creativity. Wishful thinking of innovation, the risk of stagnancy, or quoted as limiting things in design thinking application. The organizational structure should encourage cross-fertilization of ideas where systems and departments become entrenched over the years. C-suite is still pronounced in organizations. When organizations want to be like Apple design, they need genuine differentiated factors. Design as genuine differentiation factor. Business expert who can champion the value of design. This approach of risk-taking, relying on intuition and experience rather than the facts provided by the spreadsheet data or C-suite members. We need this kind of champions if design thinking is to gain traction or payoff. The way of thinking and intrinsic company culture cannot be changed in a day. Companies not providing safe space to experiment or lack performance goals or compensation models don't create incentives to do. Failures seen as incompetence rather than learnings. Valuing speed or perfection, where perfection seen as a competitive advantage, another limiting factor. Even when companies talk of innovation as their top priority, few succeed creating culture of innovation where employees can generate and grow great ideas. So, in one sec. Yeah, so unless until the design thinking and the business organization system blended with business thinking, it is going to be bullshit.
Okay, thank you. I think Raj can take over.
Yeah. My one pointed question is that you were talking about design thinking and what happens after that, but the whole question is actually to say, do you really think the design thinking process has an issue, or is it that yes, once you come out of the process and then what happens, that is not being followed up and hence it's not a success?
Yeah, actually, design thinking may give an idea, but design. My initial thought is in design thinking is sold to businesses as a tool or a process or philosophy, right? So without they change the culture of the business, it's not going to give any yield. So design thinking will be separating, and people will not be contributing much. There are some live examples like the companies run design thinking workshops and then they do focus groups and other things. At the end, it doesn't convert into a product or which is appreciated by the team which is going to use it.
Okay.
So
yeah, that's something which I would address. So something along those lines is what I would address in what I'm going to say in the next part.
So it's about process and
So you have to say something different.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
No, you have to say something different.
Let's see.
Yeah. Okay, let's vote and see what happens.
So you got 12 votes, 14 votes, 15, 2 more votes and we'll close. 16, going one, going twice. Last vote. Okay, so there I closed and I'll end the poll. So we got 90 votes. One thinks Rasko's question was bullshit. 12 think it was very sharp, and 6 are yet to figure out what it was.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
I just have one suggestion. We'll make a slight deviation from what we are doing now. Let's have 2 questions from our audience because they're already writing so much on the chat that they're eager to talk. So maybe we'll allow 2 questions and then come back to the next speaker. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So who would
sure.
be?
Yeah. So do I take a question now?
Yeah, you can ask question. Audience can ask a question.
So where do I see the chat window?
You can speak up. I mean, anybody who wants to ask.
You can speak.
Yeah.
Maybe raise a
Yeah,
hand and
here
speak.
I have a question. See, all of us are speaking about design thinking as a philosophy, a process, and like Pradyot said, right? It's even spiritual and philosophical, etc. But what's really the issue now, right? Is it the corporatization and the what do you call generalization of this process that is an issue, or are we getting insecure that there is a set of or other what you call a breed of people that are trained to actually apply design to solve problems, and there are many others actually coming and trying to encroach? What is the real issue? Why are people getting restless about this whole thing? Isn't the reason why this debate is happening?
Okay. Is it to
That's
Ari
my
or
question.
Praji?
Oh, this is a general question.
General question, maybe.
I think, sir,
Yeah,
Two of you.
I will actually put the question first to Pradyot, because you started about
Okay.
being spiritual and philosophical, and you spoke about how thinking as a process and cognition happened, right? So probably I would say it's more to Pradyot than Ariya.
Okay.
No, I think I'm with you. What you just said, I'm with you. I have mentioned this outrage is misplaced. Look, you can look at any discipline. You can look at any discipline and you can find fault into everything. Design thinking, we have picked up few bad apples. Okay, GE, a project we didn't like. Okay, MRI machine one, or honeycomb we don't like. So we say that okay, design thinking is a straightforward honeycomb kind of structure. No, it is not. It is not linear. It is up to you how you lead it. As a professional, we have onus how we lead the design profession. This is not about, that 90% of the thing has to be right. No, I think design profession is all about exploration, using creativity and not failing, but learning from it. So I'm with you. This outrage, I don't understand. It shouldn't be there.
Okay, just one additional question. Sorry, I know maybe others are also wanting to.
Good. Yeah, there's one more question to Kinari.
How do you differentiate design thinking versus, let us say, creative and strategic thinking?
Could you,
Because I think there are a lot of overlaps as well, right?
Venki, can you keep
I'll
it?
stop here after that. Yeah.
Venki, can you keep it for later discussion?
Sure.
There is
Okay.
another question from Kinari.
Sure, sir.
Can Kinari ask a question?
Yes, hi. So I'm just okay. I have written that down in the chat. I can just read it out. Okay. So I feel that if I map the term back to learning sciences, so in learning sciences, design thinking can fit into something like divergent thinking. So there is convergent thinking and there's divergent thinking. So convergent thinking is a process of finding a single best solution to one problem, while it differs from divergent thinking, which is a process of coming up with multiple unique solutions to one problem. So I feel that design thinking might be a pop science term for divergent thinking, as in people in the industry or people from not a design background are used to coming up with one solution to a problem. So for instance, a math problem, you come up with one solution for a problem. So maybe as design thinkers, what they wanted to do is they wanted to sort of give people a way direction that one problem can have multiple solutions. So this is what I feel.
All right. Okay. So shall we go to the next speaker?
Yes.
Yes, it's going to be Raj.
Yeah. Okay. So my take on design thinking is that it's basically a misnomer. Yeah, it is evolved from design process, but the way it has been transformed, I feel it is being used more as a problem-solving tool. And there's a lot of hue and cry about how can people having gone through a week's course become designers. But I think that therein lies the issue. I don't think DT is meant to make designers out of non-designers. It's simply meant to show them how designers approach problems, and in turn how they can apply it to other areas, be it products, process, or even just a situation. So extract the sense of this process and apply it in other areas. I mean, why should it be cornered by one domain, so to speak? So the process in itself has so much potential, as has been seen in many case studies, and it's not necessarily in terms of developing a product. I mean, it could be a situation. It could be. It's like one of the examples that I came across in this domain was for the Stanford Med School, where they were planning to expand their putting up a new section for cancer treatment. And they were wondering, okay, what to do, how to design. Okay, this is a new division, how to go about it. So they contacted the design school and asked them to help out. So what they thought was, okay, it's going to be a architectural event, maybe a layout design and whatever else. But what followed was something totally that sort of caught them off guard. And they went to the typical phase of empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test, and all that, which is part of the design methodology. And they did all this process, and they came up with some problems came to light which they never thought were problems, or the way people stated what the problem was when they actually went through this so-called design thinking process. They actually came to know what the issue is. Like one guy kept saying that, oh, my mattress is not very comfortable. Now, the med school uses $2,000 mattresses, which has got computers and chips, and which keeps adjusting the air pressures and make sure they don't have bed sores. I mean, this particular patient was there for about 120 days waiting for a bone marrow transplant, so he can't even go out. So he's lying there for so many days. And so he's saying, I'm missing, I'm very lonely. And in between, he'll make this statement, but this mattress is very uncomfortable. So actually, this whole process of empathize and go and sit and talk and get to know those people, they came to see there are so many other things, so many other aspects to making a patient experience. When these are cancer patients, and these are not just walk-in emergencies. They plan the treatment and they go through the whole process. So this team that was going through this process came to realize, God, there's so much more to just setting up a hospital than just putting up all the best equipment, best doctors. So basically, we're looking at design process as a design thinking as a problem-solving tool. And the way I feel is that the term design thinking, I think, is misplaced. I think probably we need to brainstorm on that to come up with a better term to say, okay, what we would call it. But design thinking is okay. It is the way designers typically think, which is being extracted and being used can be used in many different contexts, not just in terms of evolving a product or just a product. Like any product which comes up, so there is a thing about coming up with a product, and then there's a thing about implementing the product. Now, implementing the product is a whole different ballgame. So that has its own challenges. So design thinking as a way of coming up with a solution is a very valid thing, which can be essence or extracted, and that it can be used in many different areas. So I don't think design thinking is bullshit.
Good.
Thank you.
Konark, it's to your time now.
Yeah. Okay. So Raj, one question. You took that med example, right? The designers were called for the understanding that whole problem, and they were called for something else, right? And they went through this whole empathize, design, empathize, define, that whole process. What you talk about, ideate. Do you think if designers were not called for, they wouldn't have to solve that problem of that bed, that customer saying that the patient saying that it is paining here, I'm not comfortable. Those are things which you don't need designer to solve for you, right? That you can tell it to any doctor as well, and they will also understand. So it is not that designers brought some other thinking to solve that issue.
No, I think you caught that a little different. See, the D school does not actually find the solution for you. D school simply teaches you how to get in there and try and find the problems and then find a solution for it. So that's what D school does is they take different departments, different companies as a typical what they call as a guinea pig, literally, and they walk their team. I mean, it's not the D school team; it is a med school team. they are being taken through the process to say, hey, how do you get about it? How do you go about it? And what do you talk to them? You would go and talk to them, you spend that time. See, from what I had seen was that they initially started off meeting in a small closet in one corner of the hospital. And the D-School team said, what is this you're saying? You don't have any other space. So they said, no. So you have the huge atrium, why don't, but that's so open. Said, all the more better. So they actually went into the open, and there was in the atrium where people are walking about, and they actually shouted out saying, okay, these guys are doing this activity. If you have any inputs, feel free to come and share. So they really involved. So it sort of broke barriers in the med school team to say, okay, how do you go about trying to work a problem? How do you get to the depth of the problem to see what it is? And it's simply by, until a person actually went and spent time with the patient to find out why he's keeping on saying that the bed mattress is uncomfortable. Nobody actually thought of doing it that way. Until you are told that, no, you need to really understand where that pain is coming from. So that's how they will look at it. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So have people
You
voted?
can go on.
How people voted?
Yes, sir. So 10 people have voted.
Maybe more.
Guys,
Please vote.
more.
Then we go ahead. Raj is expectantly waiting for appreciation.
I'm waiting for questions.
Not Raj, abhi to Konark. It's Konark who's waiting. Was
Yeah.
it bullshit or was it very sharp? Okay, we got almost 20 votes, and I will show the results and I'll end the polls. 21 votes. 8 people think it was bullshit. 8 people think it was very sharp, and 6 people are still trying to figure out what Konark's question was.
Okay. So it looks like we are as polarized as design thinking is. Okay, so let's invite Konark now, and Paddy is going to be the jury for that.
Yeah.
So Paddy,
So,
are you ready?
Konark has to be ready. I'm ready.
Young. Okay.
Konark, no pressure. I'm going to bullshit.
Okay. Okay. So see, design thinking. My take on design thinking is it's a broad term, and it's been around from ages. Okay, and we all know it. It's not just that. It's just that we called it a design thinking decades ago. Not even 10 decades ago. It's like literally few decades ago we said that, okay, let's call this as a design thinking. And as a human, we have been, I think, doing this for personal use or for sharing it, and then sharing it our experience with others, right? From ages, like from the starts of the cave paintings. Right? We started cave paintings to communicate, saying, hey, this is how we should hunt. That time the problem was different. We don't know that, how to hunt. That was the thing, and the design solution to that was, hey, let's paint it on the cave, and that's where other people who come into this area, or other tribe who come to that area, they will solve it, right? They'll know it. And where we are talking about crypto and blockchain, why did that came into the picture? Because governments were tracking, there were a lot of anti-government establishment and etc. So now that is also coming out of design thinking, right? Now my position on design thinking today, the way it's been treated, right, and where it is told to designers saying, no, you are the guys, you guys are the only custodian of design thinking, okay, is where my problem is, and that's what it is coming out today. And that is making the word thinking is completely now slowly missing from from design thinking, and it's becoming design, okay. And the other video mentioned about critic. Along with critic, there's one more thing which is mentioned, which is missing, which is rational. That is, if you go and ask today, right, the whole thing, if you see lately, there are a lot of less rationalization given to the design. Like if you ask somebody a question, you will be saying, why are you questioning my design? I have gone through the design process, right? I've gone through this. I have had in IDC itself, some of my friends are here, like even IDC itself, I faced this, when I ask my friends a question saying, hey, I see there is a gap in what your solution is, right? Then they will not appreciate it. Sometimes they will not even come to me saying that, hey, if you go to him, he will question your design. So let's not go to him because he will not appreciate it. Okay. So that criticality is, huh?
We are listening.
Yeah. So no, let them listen, and they know this. So yeah, so that's what I was. And one other thing which happened in design, which is the worst thing to happen design thinking today in last 5 to 7 years, is it made its entry into the boardroom where C-level executives are sitting, and they started talking about design thinking. And what they did is they had a right mindset, maybe, okay, where they said, yeah, design thinking is needed. Let's do it. So what they did is they didn't go and talk to designers. They told their subordinates, go and talk to designers or go get us something who can design thinking. And they went to these designers who were there, and trust me, 5-6 years back, we were very few. Till today, in that 5 years, that 50 years, our event right, I saw we were 1141. That's the number of designers that have come out from till 2020 from IDC itself, right? We were very few. These guys were told, like, okay, you have to do the design thinking. Poor guys were put under pressure. So I think from there they designed something and dumb down those 5 steps or 6 steps. And, these are the things, if we go through this is what we generally do. Okay. And then that become like a template for everybody else to, make it a commodity. Okay. Let's just, popularize it or let it put into the template. So we can teach it to the vast majority of the thing, which was very like a crash course kind of a version of that entire design thinking. And that's when the actual bullshitting started. Okay. That, okay, now this is bullshitting. And today we are at a junction where if I go with the right problem, I will be not judged by the problem which I have solved, by the thing that how I have solved. Did you follow the right design thinking? Did you have a design thinking while you solve the problem? Not whether the problem or the solution which I've come up with is right or wrong. That's the place where we are in. And especially in the industry where I work, I'm feeling the ripple effect of it. There are places where they do these crash courses, and if you ask one single cross question to a student or a new generation designer who are just stepping into their career, you ask them, why did you do this? And they will not have an answer to it. They say that, no, we did it because it was part of the process when you grill them sometime. And it's like all of us have seen that Rahul Gandhi's meme. Either say aloo dalunga, udhar se sona niklega, right? It's become like this. Either say I'm problem dalunga, either say solution niklega. That's what design thinking is. And okay, how I conclude it cannot happen in these 5 steps, which is that it has to be done through the problem can be solved just not by just design process or design thinking, right? It has to be done by thinking, included with the critiquing and constant improvement and iterations into it. That's how we'll be able to solve this problem. Not by just putting some 5 steps and telling everybody, follow these 5 steps, you will have the solution. So yeah, that's what I want to say.
Praddy, it's your time.
So Konark, thank you very much. I think one thing which I noted, and I will give you my commentary and then I will ask a question. But one thing which I noted was that you're looking at the symptoms, some wrong apples, and you are trying to call design thinking bullshit. That was when you were talking about the solution and when you review with people. The other thing which you said, that it is being mentioned in the boardroom. I will give you some example. Companies won't be there. Tesla and Apple and Netflix and Amazon won't be there. And this is when this thing is discussed in their boardroom, this becomes a cultural norm for them. My question is this: when the way we think is getting adopted by masses and most powerful sponsors in any organization, why is that thing wrong?
Okay, it is. I'm saying, when we talk about Apple, right? When we talk about Tesla, okay, these are the companies which did not start with the way other companies are. Look at the masses of the company, which are big sizes, right? That's where in the boardroom, when you talk and say, hey, go and implement throughout the boardroom, throughout the company. That's where the problem is, because that template you go and tell it to each and every employee in the company. That's not the design thinking. Apple, Tesla were from the start. Okay? It was not that Steve Jobs did not think about design thinking after Apple became bigger. It was there when he was making his first circuit board. It started from that itself. So it was a culture. And what happens is when a culture has that from its core root, right, then it becomes like it is easy. But right now, what's happening is came into the industry at a wrong time where.
So if I can conclude, what you're saying is the way design thinking is being implemented in some context by some people is wrong. Design thinking is not necessarily bullshit. Is that what you're saying?
The way currently the design thinking is perceived, the new version of design thinking, which has been generalized and going to masses, and there are very few who understand the real meaning of design thinking, and that's why we are talking about it. And they feel affected by this when they talk to them. And this masses, when I say masses, they are more. So you meet these people on a very regular basis, and that is what is happening. Because this is getting generalized, and I have seen this example, and I'm meeting these people every day, and I feel sorry for that. I'm not angry. I feel sorry for that because they don't really understand the meaning. Today itself, in the morning, I was taking an interview of a student, of a candidate who was 3 years experience as a designer, and I asked him. He said that I did competitive analysis. I asked him why, and he was blank for 5 minutes. Literally blank for 5 minutes. They don't have that thinking that why am I doing it? He said, okay, it was part of the process, was told to me that I do the design thinking, then this is what it is. So the people are not thinking that, hey, whether what I'm doing is right or wrong, do I need to do this? What am I going to get out of this? That's what that's where this design thinking is creating a problem, and that is going to masses.
Thank you. Good. Shall we have the results of the poll?
So we got 11 votes. Guys, any more before I close it? 12.
Come on, vote quickly.
Jaldi karo. Band hone wale. Okay, now 14, and I'll show the results to everyone, and I'll end the poll. So we got 21 votes. 7 think the question was bullshit. 12 think it was very sharp, and 2 are trying to figure out.
Interesting.
Okay, good. Yeah. The second part of this session is where we expect panelists to ask questions to each other, which probably hasn't been answered well. So let's allow only two questions to go through, and then we open it to the audience. Anybody wants to ask any question?
So the panelists can ask questions to each other,
Yeah,
not the audience.
Yeah, Konark, I think more than a question, I think it is your whole position was not so much to say design thinking is a bullshit, but what is going on now, or what is now percolating down the ranks is messed up.
Yeah, and over the period of time, what will happen is these are the guys who will become leaders of tomorrow, right? With this wrong thinking. So it's going to have that ripple effect, and it's going to pass on down to the generation where if you are the one who is thinking right, will be looked upon as a wrong person. So you tell lies so many times that it becomes the truth, and the truth becomes lie. It should not happen.
But the same notion. If you're only looking at the results and looking at the symptoms to blame design thinking, this goes against the whole ethos of design thinking. Design thinking is about not being judgmental, being explorer, and doing multiple iteration in order to be really sure whether you have reached somewhere or not. Asking some question that, hey, how do you do competitive analysis in one short answer is probably not the right way of knowing whether that person can do or not do stuff. Likewise, this kind of mindset happens in most of the industry. They give time and budget, and they want something which is preconceived notion to be achieved, and then they call it failure. This is not design thinking, by the way. And if you are taking that example to call design thinking is bullshit, I think this is misplaced.
No, see, what I'm saying, I did not see the competitive analysis, right? I said, why did you do it? What did you do in competitive analysis? Not. I said, why did you do this competitive analysis? In this entire process, why were you doing this competitive analysis to get what? Okay. And the answer which I got was because it was a part of process. So it's the same thing. It's this 6-7 step. Let me go through this. Whatever comes out of it, I will say that it is came out of this, so I am not responsible for it. I was just following this. This kind of thing which is happening. And
Okay, let's
at
move on to
some
the next
level,
question.
yeah, okay. Fine.
Let's move on to the next question. Anybody else wants to ask question?
So this
Raj?
is open to all? Is this open to all?
No,
or-
no, not yet. We just
Okay.
have.
So this is okay.
Reddy, you want to ask any question?
No, I think what I'm hearing, and I want to ask this to Konark as well as to Ari. I think your position is, if I'm reading, that at the belief level, this thing is wrong, and something has gone wrong. Means people are not educated, people are not skilled yet. So people are making mistake. There are examples. Examples are for everything. You talk about architecture, you talk about art, you talk about engineering. I can give 90% of the examples which have gone wrong. That doesn't mean that that profession has gone wrong. My question to you is, do you see the distinction that this faculty, this discipline may have value, but right now we are evaluating too prematurely?
Ari, you are on mute. Ari, you are on mute.
So what I'm saying is it has value only when it is accepted or it is executed properly. Otherwise, it's just an iteration or a dream. That's what I'm trying to say. What they get out of this design thinking session is that future product or something. It has to be explored and I think what they call executed properly by the management, and it has to go through the whole ecosystem. That's where the whole thing fails. That's what I get from my case studies.
So let me ask you a follow-up question. Is that the right way of putting any process to place, like design thinking, to ask, hey, is there a value of implementing it? Or first apply it to really realize whether value can come out or not. I will give you an example. You're in automobile industry and I'm a big bull on Tesla. Why did it happen that in last 16 years, Tesla has amassed all the success? Okay, their market valuation is combining all 10 top auto players. How that thing happened? If you ask in your company in Jaguar, show me the value first of using design thinking in order to transform the world with our business, will that be a right approach to start?
Yeah, but these two businesses, they have their own liabilities, because Tesla is a new startup, so they can do this fresh thinking and fresh way of looking at it. Whereas JLR and other old brands, they have history. They can't just jump over to the next one. So their economic model is totally different. They can't just drop what they were doing and move on to electrification or something. So they've invested so much on the past, so they have to sustain and then come out of it. But it is not the same with the new era EV companies. So they are starting new, so they can do all those things. That's what I'm saying. If design as a process or a strategy, those companies survive and they do better with the design thinking. But whereas there are some companies which they don't go by design. Some they just do engineering design and then give it to product designers to style it. So those people need to develop design thinking inside. So it depends upon where it has been applied than the thinking itself. Thinking anyway, we are doing a divergent, convergent, all those things. It's already been there. It has been just given as a new capsule that, okay, if you do this, you may be like Apple, you may be like Tesla. So that's where the whole question comes. That's my stand, actually. So I'm referring to the design, the Danish design ladder. They just split into 4 or 5, 6. So the whole design thinking is where targeted is the bottom layer of the bottom run. So that's where we need to address, and they have to convince the management or the corporate or executives to adopt and execute.
Another thinking what happened.
Okay.
Sorry, just one small point, sir.
Sure.
What happened, Pradyot, was when design thinking was implemented in these companies, right, which did not have any kind of user centricity, for example, the little bit of design thinking made so much of difference, right? Like one of my professor, I think he's ex-IDC, and Nitin Udvase once told me that, told us that from going from 20% to 80%, improving the experience or improving the design is very easy. What difference you create is from 80% to 100%. right? These companies were really at 20%. Little bit of design thinking made the difference of 20 to 80%. And the needle started moving. The revenue started moving. So they said, okay, this is working. But this will stop because it was initially, so you had nothing. So you had like easier jump because you did basic stuff and you got it to the basic level. Now in some time you will see the real thing will start, and that time again I'm sure that the proper way of thinking and proper way of design methodologies will come into place. But
so we are actually converging on that idea that more education needs to be imparted. More people have to be brought into this umbrella. More management people have to really understand that if you don't do that, there is no alternative. There is no alternative. You can count beans, you can crunch your numbers in order to forecast what will happen in the future, but that will not happen. Right. There is one quote which I make. This is from Elon Musk. He says that people who win in the future are those who create the future. You just cannot, by logical thinking, by know-how, just protecting your turf, having amassing all the resources, you cannot create the future. And that's the difference. When you have to project the future, you have to use some very different ways of thinking. And I think we are converging to that there is more needs to be done in this area.
Definitely. But the way it is being done, right, has to come from a properly thought through process, like how you teach them, how you those thoughts, right? Not in this whole templates thing, you give this to everybody goes through this, and then they will be able to give the thing. It is being
Konark.
Yeah.
Time out. I think back to the
time up. Before we open up to public, and everybody can ask questions, I just have a few observations to make. First is this word democratizing design that Hari used, I think.
Yeah.
It's interesting. When you democratize things, the qualities are likely to go down. I don't see this happening, that democratizing will actually increase the quality. So that's one problem that you get into. The second observation I have is people are talking about innovation through systematic process where risk is reduced, which is what companies want. But innovation and risk go together. There is no case in the world where innovation did not have risk. So I don't see any relationship between the two. When you decide to innovate, you decide to take risk anyway. And the third is a lot of people talked about Apple as one of the case studies. One thing that is one should remember is Steve Jobs lived design, he thought design, he breathed design, right? And that is what makes a difference. It's not just following a process, but it has to be internalized in your body in order to create innovative products and innovative companies. Little more of clarification. A lot of people think that practice is not the one that can teach. I've been a follower of a book by Donald Sean called Reflective Practitioner. It's one of the best books that I've come across, and I keep quoting it everywhere. It talks about how professionals think, which includes town planners, architects, psychoanalysts, and assistant designers. And it shows wonderful ways in which designers think, which is worth looking at. Not designers, I mean those who are creative people in their profession. And his main thesis was that people in profession think through practice, and not that they practice their thinking. And that's something which is very interesting. And I think it's worth looking at as a possibility of how to start thinking through practice.
So we have another 5 minutes after this.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay. No, I thought I'll just add one more thing to that, is that actually designing involves play. Like any creative activity involves play. And somehow design thinking never talks about play. You have to be playful with whatever you're doing, your thoughts, your actions, your products, or your thing. And that is something which is completely lost. But artists, advertising people, they all know that they're playing. So I think it's important for you to integrate the idea of play with this logical thinking. I think too much logical thinking, what Brady is also mentioned is right, is not going to lead us to anything in the future. So I think I'll stop here. but let us open it out to people who would like to ask questions. First is I want to compliment people because they really asked very, very perceptive questions. And I'm sure that some of them might want to read those questions out to the panelists and others. So it's open to
So
everybody.
anybody who ask a question, please raise your hand. You can click on that Congress symbol.
Congress symbol.
What for Congress?
People had such wonderful opinions on chat. Nobody's speaking. What happens?
Maybe we can just pick up some of those questions and start or take it forward.
Okay.
There are a lot of opinions as well. Okay, Suresh has.
Which is okay. No? Let's have some opinions also.
Suresh, go ahead.
Okay, Suresh.
Yeah, I actually, can you able to hear me? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes,
Speak a
Suresh.
little louder.
Okay. Can you hear me actually?
Yes.
Yes.
My actually is not really a question, but more of an observation as far as design thinking. Okay, I agree with some of it. It has been that the word has been thrown around and has been, it has become a part of a management thing to try to apply to different ways and have a short session and things like that and see if something can work out in a very short time and all. But I think it's like a thinking has to become like a culture in a company or anywhere. It has to be part of everything that they do. It is not just about a single object or a single thing. So when you say user-centric and all these things, there's a lot of deep understanding required. Only when it happens, when you go deep and understand and spend time, and it's not like you don't get into it. So some of it, as some of you already said, consciously or subconsciously, many of us keep doing this. But for it to become a culture that whenever we are faced with a problem, either because of a competition or come out with something different and come out with, so we start with what is the problem that we are going to solve, who is going to benefit out of it, and what are his problems that he may face. When you start thinking backwards from them and do it in a more with spend time and think and do, I think that will have a lot. Definitely, it has a lot of value to channelize the solution at least in the right direction. Otherwise,
Suresh, you need to summarize.
Yeah. So I mean, that's what my thought on that. It is. I agree, it's an important thing. I won't call it a bullshit. Okay, let me try to bring it back to that. I won't call it a bullshit from that point of view.
Okay.
Fine. Pramod R has put in a lot of interesting comments, and Ashish Handa has also put some comments. Are they there still? Would you like to talk?
Ashish is there.
Ashish?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Hello.
Yeah. I sort of agree to a few points that Konark had put, right? So it's more of what people have taken in their own capacities out of this popular word called design thinking, rather than getting deeper into it, rather than experiencing or practicing it from the core of it. That is all, and this is something that I've observed. So before where I work right now, I was with GE, and design thinking has been practiced in lot more good sense from a very long time. But what I had observed in my 5 years of career is that the distance or the difference between designers and other professions was continuously reducing in terms of understanding users or designing for users, and people just speak that they are doing that, but how much are they doing it, and how do designers keep a creative gap, because that is what we ultimately get down to, right? Our basics, we are creative. So we still need to wow people. We still need to do something that creates that edge over how other people approach a problem. And that is reducing. Is it just verbal reduction or is it actual reduction of understanding? Because if it really reduces and people start.
What's the question? And
No question, sir. No question. Pankaj sir, yeah. It's just a comment. So I sort of agree where Konark was going, but I completely have faith in the whole process. If we are practicing it right, we will definitely influence a lot more around us. So, no question. Yes. Thank you.
Venki was asking a question which was left incomplete. Venki, would you like to do that now?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, sir. So the part of it is a comment and part of it is a question. So first, the opinion part of it, right? I think what is happening and which is where probably many of us are getting restless is design thinking being processized, right? Putting it in a template and saying that follow this method, you will end up with a result. Being force fit certain things, I think that's where probably things are getting restless, because there is that spark, that disruption that is actually required for you to make that creative bent and innovation which is actually required. I think that's the hallmark, I think, which is need to be emphasized. And while part of it is actually taught, I think part of it also comes from a nature of culture and how you actually imbibe through practice over time, right? I do not know whether that spark can be institutionalized to a large extent, because there is something that you need to start with a raw material, right? And that raw material perhaps can be taken, but if the raw material doesn't exist, I do not know whether the disruption can actually happen, right? That's one part of it. The second was the question part, which is where I said, right, how do you differentiate, or rather how do you draw boundaries between what I call as creative and innovative thinking, which can be a very large space, and second is design thinking, where to me I apply it to solve business problems in order to generate certain outcomes, and which is applied to business problems is one part of it. And the last part is, which is where I think Pradyot also was heading, is to look at it from a systems and an ecosystem perspective, right? Which is where you holistically look at the entire environment. And of course, in this context, I'm talking from a business environment perspective, right? So these are three things that I wanted to understand. How are we actually differentiating and how are we drawing boundaries? Or do you think there is a lot of overlap, in these areas?
So I can give you my I can give you my quick thing. So a lot of I agree, Venki, with your point of view, and the way I see this misunderstanding is that you might have heard the story, one elephant and few blind men. Okay, we are not defining elephant that way. We are just trying to define whatever we can latch onto. We have some toolkits, we have some method, and that produces some result. And because we don't like it, we just say that the whole culture and the belief system and principles are wrong. That is unfounded, in my opinion. There were also some discussion about what is creative method, convergent thinking, divergent thinking, and all that. Look, I mentioned this in my opening, that design thinking is not just some set of one method or the other. Honeycomb is most criticized. There are a lot of stuff. You might have heard about lateral thinking. You know about divergent thinking, convergent thinking. All of these are double diamond, right? All of these are framework. You can pick and choose based on what your style is, what your organizational culture is, and what is the demand from the context. And you can apply that to get to some point. In one of my playbook, when I make presentation, I tell people that, look, logical thinking and critical reasoning cannot take you to that point in future. That doesn't mean that that is wrong. Once you have figured out what to do, that is exactly what you apply. But if that is not sufficient, you use creative method. Design thinking manages different kind of method. It can be creative, it can be analysis, logical, whatever, through the process. And if you just pick up something which is double diamond, first part is exploring the problem. Second part is exploring the solution. And very clearly, people know that you are in the exploration mode. Okay, whatever comes out has to be tested, vetted. There has to be a business case about it. So that is how I think design thinking is much larger than just defining by some frameworks.
Sir, we have come to the end of our time, so you might want to summarize.
Okay. Let me give a few of my views. One of the things is design thinking has developed from many sources. Imagine it to be a tree and it has roots. Part of the roots come from art, and we forget that we have learned and inherited a lot of practices from art. Part of the roots come from engineering, where we have learned about logical thinking and rational thinking, step-by-step approach and all that. We learn from management and we learn from humanities. Now, these roots are spread into such diverse things that it is not a good idea to call it design thinking anymore. And the correct word for that is designerly thinking. There is a separate literature on this designerly thinking, which is what we should be looking at. Unfortunately, it has got that label design thinking and got mixed up with it. One of the major characteristics of design thinking is the messiness. And we have to tackle that messiness head on, rather than saying that let's think clean, let's think logical, let's think in terms of small incremental steps, etc. It's the age of the designer is in his messy way of thinking, of going back and forth and trying to do it again and again and again and again till he satisfies himself. And it's so much emotion bound. And I'm a little worried that design thinking doesn't seem to sort of take care of any of these issues at all. They are simply straitjacketed into 5 hexagons that we're talking about. And saying that you do this, you do this, you do this, and something like that. And a lot of speakers spoke about that it is almost straitjacketed kind of a process. A process doesn't deliver, it's the person who operates that process delivers. If that was so, then it's person that is important, and studying that person is a very important aspect of it. I liked the number of suggestions which people have given. One of them was, of course, the fact that we should probably look at educating people about design thinking rather than criticizing it or saying going gaga over it. I think this is something very important, but I don't know how we can take it up. But it is quite possible that alumni could start thinking in terms of maybe creating something on design thinking which becomes a kind of a package for its alumni to use in their companies. So that's one possibility that one can think of. I was hoping that there were more participation from audience, but that seemed to have sort of, people are more comfortable with chat rather than asking questions directly. But I hope that things will change in future. My last observation is, should this format continue and have more different topics for discussion in future? This kind of a panel discussion format continue or not? And I'm sure that a lot of you can put a little bit on the chat to tell us whether it is worth continuing these kind of a thing once in a while. Not all the time, because the alumni presentations have a different flavor and this has a different flavor. So that is something which you can write in the chat. But we are going to end with an interesting vote. And then Nimish is going to take over now and going to talk about the significance of that vote. All right, Nimish?
Yeah, so the last poll has been opened up. So now that you have heard the debate, tell us what do you think design thinking is? So we got 7 votes till now. Guys, please go ahead and vote. So those who voted for the first question, before we started, we definitely have a vote, and we want to see if it has changed or not. Has there been any mood shift, or is it still the same?
Change of heart.
Yeah, let's see. Who's kind of have they modeled your mind a little more? Are you not sure anymore, or are you sure?
I changed my mind too.
Okay.
Okay, let's see whether the polls show that change of mind.
So we got 23 votes, guys. In the beginning, we got 44 votes for this question. We got 23. I think some would have left off, so that's understandable. But if we can get a few more, I'll end the poll. Okay. So I am now going to end the poll, and it is ended. And I'll show the results of both. So in the beginning, we got 44 votes, out of which 9 thought it was bullshit, so which is about 20%, and 27 thought it was a boon, and and obviously 8 thought they're not sure. At the end, we got 23 votes, and 5 think it was bullshit, so it's about the same, about 20%. and 11 thought it was Boon. So we are kind of in the same range. I think people have not changed their mind from where they were. So I think we are still in this in the same muddy waters.
Or they all of them got interchanged.
There are two ways of looking at it. One of them is that the speakers were so balanced that people didn't change their vote. So that's one way.
Side were quite
Second
balanced.
one is that they are unable to convince people to change their vote. So depending on, you can take whatever you want. Okay. Thank you very much for being here, and I hope that people have enjoyed this process, and maybe many more would come in the future. Many more debates will come in future.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Good night,
Thank you
everyone.
so much. And
Very nice.